Welcome to MKF News Channel. Right, let's take you back to Los Angeles and the student demonstrations that have spilled over into violence on the campus. There at UCLA, we can show you these pictures from the last hour or so, and you can see the violence. People with sticks. We saw objects being thrown, wooden pallets being thrown. There's been a camp there of pro-Palestinian demonstrators making their voices heard, angry about what's happening in Gaza. There's also a pro-Israeli group of protesters too, and there has been ongoing demonstrations and protests on the site, but they did escalate into violence at about 11 p.m. local time, and then we heard from the mayor that the police were then called in. Let's speak now to Dylan Winwood, features and student life editor. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you for having me. What do you make of the pictures that we've just been seeing? Yes, so we have reporters on the site at the moment. From 10:50 local time this evening, counter-protesters showed up as they have been doing for the last couple of days to disrupt the encampment. We know as well that they fired off fireworks towards the encampment and that there's been tear gas used on site. One of our reporters at the student newspaper at the Daily Bruin got tear gas this evening as well. So that's what's currently going on there. We know that campus has requested a police presence from across the city to come in, and from the last I've just heard that they've arrived several hours later. Interesting. And let's go back to the beginning there. We've seen the big patch of land with lots of tents on. Are we right in this understanding that's the pro-Palestinian? A group of students talk us how long have they been there, and what have they been doing up until before this evening? So the encampment is organized by Students for Justice in Palestine, a UCLA student group. They've been there since Thursday morning. They have a number of demands, but the chief among them is to have the university divest from companies associated with the Israeli military. They've largely been protesting peacefully. They've held programming. They've had speeches and chants, but pretty much from the first evening they were there overnight, they've been harassed by increasingly large groups of counter-protesters. We're aware that it's over 100 this evening, some of whom have just been keeping them awake, shouting, playing music, and in recent evenings it's also become increasingly violent. And that brings us up to about 11 o'clock this evening. Clearly it's very recent, but what do we understand about what has happened? What changed in the mood, in the atmosphere there? So earlier on today, this afternoon, actually, a U.S. congressional committee summoned UCLA university leaders to talk about anti-Semitism in a hearing next month. In response, UCLA leaders declared the encampment as an unlawful assembly. They have said that students who are participating in it could face academic sanctions at the university. They stopped short of saying that they were going to arrest students on campus, but they asked students to leave the encampment this evening at about 10 or 11 o'clock. We then saw a large number of counter-protesters turn up as they have done in recent evenings. We know yesterday evening there was also an altercation, but it was nothing like we've seen on the scale tonight. We know that they tried to breach the encampment perimeter as they have been doing for the last couple of evenings, and have thus far been repelled. But we know also that they were throwing objects. They were throwing fireworks. They threw a scooter, water bottles, and tear gas towards the encampment as well. And that brings us up to what we've been seeing in the nighttime. Pictures feed from about 1 o'clock a.m. is for about half an hour. There were periods where there were direct confrontations, and then there would be a pause as people would step back. Is it talk us through the geography? This line of tents, is this effectively the edge of the pro-Palestinian camp where they've been for a while, and that's the focus point of the counter-demonstrators? Is that right? So what you're probably looking at there as the central quad of the UCLA campus, and on one half of it really is the pro-Palestine encampment. There was a barrier set up in between. With a buffer zone, there were about 30 hired professional security guards hired by the university to separate Protesters from counter-protesters. We know this evening is the first time that they actually withdrew away from the encampment site. We believe that's because they didn't feel they could safely hold it, allowing the two sides to clash directly, but previously in between there had been a buffer zone. Those barriers have since been knocked over by the counter-protesters this evening.